In this module, we are going to discuss on qualitative strategy of inquiry, or in, in the research approach, we said this is the research design. So in a qualitative strategy of inquiry, predominantly we have phenomenology, grounded theory, ethnography, narrative inquiry, and case study. Let us try to discuss each of them in detail. Phenomenology is a strategy of inquiry in which researcher identifies the essence of human experience about a particular phenomenon. Take, for instance, we want to understand what is the experience of mother whose child is an autistic child. So this lived in experience, if we want to understand, then we need to use this method of inquiry called as phenomenology. Here, the more focus is on understanding the first-hand experience of the participant rather than second-hand experience. Because from the first-hand experiences, we are trying to study extensively as regards to the phenomena in order to make meaning out of these experiences. One of the classic studies it was published in the journal Management Research Review, wherein the members' readiness for change in manufacturing industry was studied using phenomenology. Here, change management as regards in a manufacturing industry, it could be a new uh, a new methodology like a Six Sigma or Lean Six Sigma is implemented, or a major radical process is implemented as regards to labor reforms and so on. So how does the members experience the change is a process which those members have gone through in the process. So this this method of phenomenology helps a researcher to identify the essence of human experience, through which you would be able to glean meaningful data in order to create mid-range theories in order to explain in this case, explain the concept of change. The next method of strategic inquiry is grounded theory. As the name suggests, the output of this method is a substantial theory to be explained about a particular phenomena which is being looked into. Take, for instance, a researcher want to study uh, when if quality 4.0 is implemented in an organization, what would be the response of the shop floor? So at that time, we want to understand a technology-based quality management um, initiative is implemented. At that time, how would the shop floor workers react to it? So that we want to create a mid-range theory as regards to how the process of adoption of quality 4 could be explained in detail. So here, what the motto here is, we try to understand the interactions of participants in terms of their view in order to create categories which will help us to create a mid-range theory as regards to what are its antecedents, what are its consequences, what are its mediating mechanisms and moderating mechanisms in order to build a viewpoint as regards to the phenomena under study. This process is a multi-stage process, and there is a saying that data collection and data analysis is intertwined with each other. That means data collection and data analysis happens in a cyclical manner rather than a linear manner. This is the distinguishing feature of grounded theory. Two primary characteristics are constant comparison. That means if a new unit of data is coming in, it is compared constantly with the existing data in order to create category. Take for instance, a new category has come in and we compare it with the existing data. If it is similar, then it would be categorized in the same category. If it is different, then it would be a new category. Similar way, we go on building the building blocks of various theoretical viewpoints in order to create this particular theory. Concept here and that is called also called as theoretical sampling. In this, we want to sample those groups so that we can maximize the similarities and differences of information. One of the classical study is a grounded theory approach to consumer brand management. And here, practitioners' standpoint was considered. And this study was published in International Journal of Market Research. I'm just giving it an example. It doesn't mean that this is one of the best studies, but rather a representative of grounded theory. The next method of inquiry is called as ethnography. Ethnography study differentiates from earlier two methods. Here, the researcher wants to study a cultural group in a natural setting. So, and a researcher wants to study it over a period of time. Here, the researcher either becomes an observant, he become an interviewer, or also he can be a participatory. That means there are studies wherein the researchers have gone to study remote groups. He was living in those groups in order to understand the nuances as regards to how participants in a very remote group is behaving. The research process is flexible and involves contextually in response to lived realities encountered in a real life setting. So, a participant uh, and the researcher is at a very high degree of interaction. This enables the researcher to glean out informations qualitatively about the setting in order to create the theory in depth. So here we have different tools by the observation, interaction, interview, which will help to create the real life environmental stories. Take, for instance, when classical studies in administrative science quarterly, technicians in workplace, how do they live? How do they work in organizations? What one wanted to be studied. So in this study, the researcher works as a technician in an organization in order to understand the day-to-day experiences of technician in the workplace. The last method of narrative. In fact, there is one more method case study in terms of in the strategy of inquiry of qualitative study is narrative inquiry. Here, the strategy of inquiry is the researcher want to understand the stories about of the participants. Why stories? Because it want to study the lived in experiences in which is being told by the participant in a form of narration. Take for instance, we have designed a new product and we want to understand how what are the experiences of the users. And the stories, either positive, negative, can be used to create a construction. Here, in a narrative inquiry, Usually, we don't require a large sample size, but rather very small sample size. However, the in-depth narration of the stories makes the study more richer, denser, by which we would be able to understand in detail as regards to the interactions about the particular event. Some of the classical studies, one of the good study was published in Journal of Advertising, where communicating experiences as regards to how a service brand image is created. That experience was narrated by the participants, and by which this study could be uh, carried out. The last method of a qualitative study is case study. Now, case study can be quantitative study too, but we categorize in this area a case study because usually when you observe a case, we take either the secondary data, we interview the candidates, or sorry, the participant who were dominant or who were the key players about creation of the secondary data, and so on. So most of the studies, case studies, are classified into qualitative studies. The very important One of the important facet of case study is you can pick up a case which has large number of variables, and you can study it in a heuristic manner as regards to bringing out an in-depth understanding of an event. Take, for instance, you are taking a case study of an organization which has implemented Industry 5.0. An in-depth study of the case, you would be able to understand the different variables which contributed to the success of Industry 4.0. So it is a strategy of inquiry in the researcher explores in depth about a program, event, activity, or process about an organization, individual, or a group. And these cases are bounded by time, activity, and researcher collects data at a variety of data collection procedures over a sustained period of time. One of the classic studies was published in Journal of Operations Management. The concept of Six Sigma till 2008 eluded a definition. So in this study, the authors wanted to define and underline and bring out the underlying theory behind Six Sigma. And this was carried out by these authors in this particular study. This brings an end to this module.